All right, so I think we are alive or live, both. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Marwa Fatafta, and I am the policy manager for the Middle East and North Africa at Access Now. I'm very excited to be moderating the press conference for today on the unfortunate events in Ethiopia and the violence that has swept the country both online and offline. Our two speakers for today, my colleague Berhan Tayi. She is our senior policy analyst and she leads our Africa work as well as the global work on internet shutdowns. She is based in Nairobi, Kenya. And our second speaker is Befeqadu Hailo. He's a writer and advocate for liberal democracy in Ethiopia. He's the executive director of the Center for Advancement of Rights and Democracy. Befeqadu recently received the PEN International Writer of Courage Award for 2019. Congratulations. And he is the co-founder of the Zone 9 Blogger Collective. Before we go into the discussion, I would like to give our audience a quick and brief overview of the recent developments in Ethiopia. So last month, on June 29th, an Oromo musician and social activist, Hachalu Hundessa, was shot dead in Addis Ababa. Following his killing, some parts of Ethiopia were engulfed in protests, unrest, and violence. And since then, over 160 people were killed. The offline troubles that rocked the country were also visible in the online space. And the actors who were instigating violence offline were also inciting violence and propagating hate online. This is not the first time that has happened in Ethiopia, and unfortunately, this won't be the last. So far, Facebook has failed to prevent the escalation of violence or incitement to violence on its platform and services, and particularly in Ethiopia. We have half an hour to about 60 minutes to just have this discussion, and we welcome your questions. So please drop them in the chat box on the platform. And jumping into the conversation in the discussion, I will start with Befeqadu. So could you please set the scene for us? What's happening in Ethiopia and what is exactly the impact of fake news and disinformation in the country?
Thank you, Marwa. As you have already mentioned, this is not the first time when the impact of continued disinformation caused or at least triggered violence on the ground, because the people who are involved in offline violence are also online, so they apparently post contents that might lead to violence, or at least trigger according to the information that we have. So this is practically what happened. So especially in the past 2 years, Ethiopia is witnessing some sort of political change or reform. At first, it was mostly opening the political space, and it was more of liberating. But as the political contestations are, becoming, wider and broader, the violence on the ground has been increasing. We have been witnessing a lot of violences that were deadly and that destroyed a lot of properties of individuals in different parts of the country. So if we take the recent phenomenon, it didn't exactly happen because there was hate speech online or false information online, because most of the time when the deadly violence happened, internet was shut across the country. But it has been building. A lot of disinformation was creating anger among the youngsters that are involved in the recent violence. It has been building hatred towards community members. So just the moment Haj Alu was assassinated, even before there was little information about who might have killed that artist, people were sure that some community members were the perpetrators or the killers of that artist. So they go out to avenge his murder, and they destroyed a lot of properties. They killed a lot of people in the violence. So this is practically happening in the misinformation, false information in hate speech online is not a separate issue to this incident. It is interrelated because it has been building cases to what's happening now. I think it is a brief introduction to what happens, but we will come back to it all later.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Befeqadu. So I'll turn to Berham. I know that Access Now and a bunch of other civil society organizations from Africa, as well as from around the globe, have sent a letter to Facebook. So could you please tell us about this letter to Facebook and why now?
Thanks, Marwa, and thanks, Befeqadu. One thing that I also want to note on Befeqadu's point earlier is that, much of the violence, there was also excessive use of force by law enforcement agencies, and there was also a deliberate lack of, presence of law enforcement agencies. So the amount of people that have died is definitely attributed to those two, and of course the third cause as well. So specifically addressing your question of why now, we actually feel we were a bit late to this conversation. We've seen a spat of violence happen in October 2019, and and as Befeqadu has mentioned earlier, there is the propagation of hateful content online, the propagation of violence inciting content online, disinformation and misinformation on the platforms, including Facebook and YouTube and others, has been left as if it's the social media context in Ethiopia seemed to be the wild west, where any conversation goes. You can threaten somebody's life. You can try put content that discriminates against 40 million people, 6 million people. It doesn't matter. You can post anything you want without any consequences and without these platforms taking the action that they're supposed to, and their corporate responsibility, their business and human rights responsibilities. So they're missing all of those marks on specifically these things. So now this time around, when what was really quite visible, and this was also visible last year when generals were assassinated in the country, when the internet went off, and a bunch of the trusted partners that have taken the burden of reporting content on Facebook went offline because there was complete internet shutdown. Again, what we saw online was this rampant content being spread online, YouTube videos and Facebook Live videos calling for the assassination of communities, both minority and majority, ethnic groups. So it was just a wild west, where for us, we were like, we've been late to this conversation. This is not the first time that this has happened, but we were like, it's time to call on these platforms. We've had numerous occasions. We've talked to them off the record. We've talked to them on the record. The special rapporteur for the UN Special Rapporteur for Freedom of Expression, David Kay, on his last trip to Ethiopia, he put out a statement that was very clear on the implication of disinformation, misinformation on the fledgling democracy in the country, and its implication on and potential implication on offline violence. So for us, it's, you know, we feel we're a bit too late in this conversation. We actually feel like we're taking, you know, when we were drafting all of this, we felt like we were being actually opportunistic using this time, because we should have done this in October. We should have done this in 2019, July. We should have done this in December 2018, but nothing seems to change from their end. So that's, you know, this is the reason we're saying, you know, why not now?
Thanks, Berhan. And so what are your demands? What Facebook needs to do? And how should they take their responsibilities towards that hate speech on its platform?
So the first thing is first, right? So this way of saying, you know, the machine learning has to learn the different language, and, you know, until then, you know, there isn't much we can do. It's not acceptable. Like, how long do we have to say our lives matter? How long do we have to tell Facebook and other social media platforms that people should not be put at risk because the machine learning has to learn? That's, you know, in my head, that's not acceptable. And I'm sure, and this is not just an issue in Ethiopia. We've seen this in Myanmar, we see this in India, we see this in Brazil, we've seen this in many other countries. So we are not an outlier in this conversation. So the first one is, you have to take this seriously, and we can't have another Myanmar happen on our hand, and you doing a human rights impact assessment at the end is not something that we want in this case. So this is our first demand. The second one is, so we want to, like, we have in the letter, we have two specific, you know, immediate actions that need to be taken, and then we have second versions. So if you look at the Facebook app right now, and the way that people can report content right now, it's only fully available in Amharic, which is good, that we commend that, but it also needs to be available in other language. The first one is Afan Oromo, the second one is Tigrinya, the third one is Somali, and of course, you know, other language as they develop, right? So this conversation of, oh, we don't have enough translators is not acceptable. You are a rich, $1 billion worth organization. I'm sure you can hire more content moderators to put on board. So our first demand is actually that content moderation, especially because majority of Ethiopians access, you know, Facebook using their mobile phones. And when you go, so on desktop, you can actually change the language. So there's a bit of an Oromo, there's a bit of an Amharic that you can use, but on mobile, on mobile apps, those are completely not there. So people should be able to report content in their own mother tongue. You know, even in my own mother tongue, it's so difficult to report content. Even in English, it's very difficult to report content, because if you're not a lawyer, if you're not in the space, you don't understand the difference. It's very, like, the layman, the everyday Ethiopian does not understand the difference between hate speech and discrimination, right? Like, so there's so the way that you report is so specific. So they have to be able to provide that in people's mother tongue. The second one is, you know, our second demand is pretty straightforward. Please stop, you know, the propagation of violent, inciting content, hateful content on your platform. And we know, you know, we've had these conversations for how many years now. We know how the algorithms work. We know how, you know, the automatic content suggestion systems also are used to propagate violence. So we want that to stop, and we want specific actions to be taken that are visible, that are not going to happen in closed doors. We want to see this, you know, happening on the platforms that is visible to many other Ethiopians. The third one, and I think for us also very important in this context, is that okay, the machine learning hasn't learned my language, doesn't know how for generations, doesn't know the words that has been used to discriminate against me and other people for generations. Maybe let's accept that, but you have to hire content moderators. And when you hire content moderators, they have to be people that understand the social, political, economical, you know, social structures of the country. You can't just hire somebody off the market that's going to be able to do this. And, you know, and the people, and there needs to be a very good collaboration with not just the content moderators, but, you know, the human rights team within Facebook, the policy team has to be able to understand. You can't just hire, you know, somebody that sits out of, you know, Berlin or Geneva that doesn't understand the Ethiopian context and needs a lot of, you know, time to be able to understand these things. You have to. We've been saying this. Ethiopia is going to be the next Myanmar, especially in the hateful content space, if we don't take action. So we need to see those actions being taken. The third one and the fourth one, I think for me, what's important is that we see the cycle of violence happening over and over again. We had a similar situation in October. Now, you know, within 8 months, we're here again, and there's nothing to guarantee that something is not going to happen, you know, in the next few months. So there needs to be an emergency escalation system for them to be able, to adapt and to change as things happen on the ground. So the context from 6 months ago has completely changed. So they also need to adapt. But in saying this, all of these has to be in human rights and right respecting manner. We're not telling you to take down all content. We're not telling you to highlight all content. That's not the case. And I think the fifth one and the most important one is they have to, again, if the machine learning is not up to its task yet, you have to spend money, you have to invest in communities, and you have to be able to teach people how to report content. So use the advertisement channels, use TV stations to report and to show people on how to do this. But then you also have to do the extra work when once content is reported, it has to be taken down. What we see now is that a similar content in Amharic will be taken down. It won't be taken down in Oromifa when you report it. It will be taken down in Oromifa. It won't be taken down in Tigrinya. So all of those disparities are costing human lives. So we can't no longer negotiate with this. So these are some of the demands in the letter that we have.
Thanks a lot, Berhan. I think it's a loud and clear cry for Ethiopia before it turns into another Myanmar, and for Facebook to take responsibility. And you rightly pointed out that this is not only in Ethiopia, but also includes many countries from around the world. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like a problem of resources, but rather a problem of political will for them to take on that responsibility. I will move on to back to you, Befeqadu, and I mean, you are a renowned activist and advocate in Ethiopia, and your organization was the first to sign on that letter. Why is this letter important to you?
This is important to us because we are very much concerned about the lives that have been lost and the properties that have been lost. We have been working, we have been trying to monitor the social media for false information and hate speech. It has been there. So even though we could not find a direct relationship between, of course, there are direct relationships that we can cite, but for example, in October there was a post posted by a renowned activist, but we could not call it false information. We could not call it hate speech, but it was completely sensitive to say to give it a name. But in any case, people were angry and were violent. There happened conflicts, intercommunal conflicts following that post, and also police response was brutal but late, usually. Instead of preventing, it is using extra force once it happened in the side of police. So police is not doing its job. So at least the social media platforms must be responsible for the consequence that their platform is bringing as a problem. So they can. We also believe that they can do it because we have been reporting content that might lead to eventual violence, like I was trying to say earlier. Most of the violences may not be directly related, like the October one. They may not be directly related to the violence that we witnessed last month or previously, but they build cases towards those kinds of violences. And from the past, we also expect similar incidents, violent incidents might happen in the future too. We are going to a much awaited election. It is extended due to COVID pandemic, but it is going to happen anytime in the future, in the couple of years. So there are terms that actually the machine can learn would lead to violence. So it has to automatically respond to those terms, and then they can make them available if their content is not, if the contents of the posts that have those terms are not that much dangerous, they can return them back, but they have to filter them out immediately the moment they are posted, because most of these terms, hateful terms, would actually build cases for future violences, if not for current violence. That's what's happening. False informations also play the same role. We have seen them all. So individually, let alone us who are organized enough to monitor and see the trends, even random individuals who are using the social media in Ethiopia, who are frequently using Facebook in Ethiopia, know that some specific incidents are actually vulnerable to escalation of hateful conversations that might lead to violent aggressions between people offline. So the assassination of Hachalu actually gave that alert to almost all individuals who use social media in Ethiopia. Why would the platform fail to understand these things? So similarly, the political conversation has a lot of key terms that actually feed such kind of hate-mongering conversations. And those are becoming also excuses for internet shutdown, restriction of freedom of expression for activists, journalists, and others. We were not able to access information or speak what we think because internet was shut for 3 weeks. The government used these kinds of incidents to justify the internet shutdown, even though it's not legal or there is no necessary or legitimate justification for all what happened. So this is why we need the platform to be proactive instead of being reactionary after things already happened.
Thanks a lot, Befeqadu and Birhan. I think that brings us to open the floor for questions from our audience. So if you'd like to ask a question, please add your question to the chat box. And in the meantime, I have a question for the both of you. So while there is incitement to violence on the platform, and when Facebook quickly or not so quickly reacts to removing these documents as this content or posts as human rights organizations documenting human rights violations or such calls for violence and for hate. Do you find it, what are your demands also for the platform, for Facebook to help help organizations that work on documenting human rights violations for documentation, and also to archive them for later litigation work?
Okay. While we are monitoring the social media for false information and hate speech, we find a lot of information. But what we are at this point trying to do is understand the trends, because they make sense. The more you are monitoring the social media for these contents, they actually make sense. We know when false information escalates, because it's not the same trend always. When there are some incidents on the ground, false information, the number of false information disseminating online increases, and they aggravate the conflicts on the ground. Let me give you one example. For example, in October 2018, actually in November, I'm thinking in Ethiopia calendar, that's why I said, in November 2018, there 2 students were killed in a university in Amhara region. The reason was more of personal, even though it's not still clear, but it looks personal from the information that are available. But on the social media, it was over politicized and it has been ethnicized. So in a kind of domino effect, it almost reached 27 universities, and it has killed about 12. It has caused the deaths of 12 students in 2020 and 2019. So the social media is playing a role of escalating conflicts that happened on the ground. And there were false information that actually ethnicized those individual conflicts, those deadly individual conflicts. The same thing happened in different conflicts. So we, by trying to monitor, we are trying to understand some sort of relationships between the conflicts on ground and online. So if, but our resources are very limited. If many human rights organizations are involved in such activities, we would have complete image of what's happening on the social media, how we can control and prevent their role as aggravators of conflicts on the ground, and we can maybe able to prevent coming conflicts or aggravations, if not, at least stop the previous one. Also, we can have, by documenting and following the trends, we can at least present information so that the victims can get justice.
Thank you very much. So Berhan, would you like to comment or add something?
Yeah. I think one of the demand that we have also on that in that letter is to say that, yes, do take down content that is inciting violence, that's hateful and is not within your community standards, but please take measure to archive that content so that, one day, in where we are now in Ethiopia, justice seems to be such a fluid term. I'm not sure when we will get there, but at least for victims, for national jurisdiction, mechanisms for international groups to be able to investigate and to understand what happened in the online space. The second one is, and I think one context that is important here is, there aren't that many digital rights civil society organizations, let alone civil society organizations in Ethiopia. We've lived for the past 28 years under dictatorship. Now that has shifted a bit. There seems to be a bit more, freedom of expression, access to information, and many other fundamental rights, but we're not fully there. So, and Bafik Adu raises a really important point here that, one thing that we're struggling with is understanding actually what happens online. We don't have the full picture. What the few anecdotal things that we mentioned to you here are things that have exponentially grown online, went viral, and were able to catch the attention of many of us. There are many micro things that happen online that we're unable to to understand, but that have and might have big implications on our fledgling democracy and the harmony and national cohesion of the country as well. So that's one of the things that we're struggling with. But I think, at least from one thing that Facebook can do right now, and other platforms as well, YouTube is going to be soon very fully implicated in this, because they're also unable to take down certain content, and we're definitely reaching out to them soon. So if they're on this call, they should look into that. Is at least archiving that content is really, really important, and being able for victims and other people to have easy access to that, so that we can study it, we can understand it, and we can learn from it.
Thanks a lot, Berhan. So we have a few questions from the audience, and I'll start with the first. Stopping disinformation was one of the justifications for the shutdown, but it actually seems to be fueled by limiting voices and online sources of information, doesn't it? So I'll pose the questions to you, and whoever feels wants to go first, and the second can just follow with the answer.
I have said some things about that. Internet disinformation has been a justification for internet shutdown. So let me try to explain what I mean. It doesn't matter whether actually the internet shutdown would cause more violence on ground and suppress, the reporting of it or not. The government, in any case, since the platforms are not responding quickly, they are using some contents online as a justification, as a cause that there would have been more violence instigating content online if they did not shut the internet. So that's why we are actually asking the platforms to be, proactive and to respond quickly. Otherwise, it would be used as an excuse. It keeps on, being used as an excuse by the authoritarian governments to suppress it. But from what we have seen now, we cannot even give examples because, it was the internet, like I said, it was down, but in the blackout, there was violence. We heard about the violences 2 days later and 3 days later. I don't believe that we have actually a clear picture of what happened. I've been visiting one of the cities, the towns that actually experienced the worst violence in last time, 2 weeks ago, or a month ago actually. So what I understood from what I have seen yesterday is that actually we did not have a clear picture of what happened. The people tried to explain to me some of what happened, and I tried actually to look back into what I was thinking, and there is actual gap between my understanding and the reality, because internet was shut. Also, we didn't learn about police restraint during those violences, but later they took excessive force to stop the violence once it has escalated on the ground. If we had internet connectivity, maybe we hear about the violences early. Also, there are a lot of people online. It's not only violence instigators who are online. So, the government will be put in pressure so that they respond quickly. In any case, the internet is down. Now it has a lot of justifications because of the refrain from the social media platforms. And now I meet every day and try to explain why internet should not be down during such violences. But people usually get convinced of the government propaganda that this is the case. Actually, if it was not down, the conflict would be worse.
Thanks a lot. Berhan, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think what makes the internet shutdown this time around a bit different for us is that, I personally have to have conversations with my parents where they're like, maybe this time around, because it was shut down, it was good. You can see that there's a lot of, and what that really tells me is that, the government has used disinformation, misinformation, fake news, and violence inciting content as a justification to shut down the internet, and really at the core of it, control the narrative. So, and what Befeqadu was saying here is so important, that until today, we don't know the extent of the violence in the country. Not necessarily because the internet was shut down, but the fact that the internet was shut down really contributes to that. The fact that we fluctuate between saying 160 people have died to 200 to 400, there's so many, individuals in between that many numbers, right? Like, we're talking about actual individuals, human beings. And the fact that, and again, relating this back to the topic that we're talking about today, the lack of action from these platforms to take down legitimate content that's inciting violence. And there's a specific video that has been circulating around that was taken down later, was used as a justification by government officials, that were either reaching out to us individually as people that they know, or as using it as a narrative in the country. So that is really dangerous and is affecting human rights work, is affecting freedom of expression, is affecting the press freedom and many other fundamental rights in the country. So that's a really salient point here as well.
Thanks a lot, Berhan. I'll move to the second question. How do you feel with the concern some groups have about excessive takedowns when we ask for swift action to take incitement down?
I can start with that. Our call is not for excessive takedowns. All of these actions that are used for content moderation should be right respecting, should be within within the international standards of human rights, right? We've seen in many cases where, and I think Befeqadu, there was at some point where your content was being either taken down or you were unable to post on Facebook at some point, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong about that. So that's not what we're looking for here. What we're looking for is, for them to take swift action in a sense that increase the number of content moderators that you have. When legitimate, what we're seeing now is not excessive takedown. And I wish the conversation was about that, because then that's again, they shouldn't do excessive takedown, but that's a very different conversation that we'll be having. Right now, what we're seeing is you report a content in Amharic, it will be taken down. It will take time, but it will go down at some point. You content a report in Oromifa, it takes a really long time before it's taken down. You you report a content in Tigrinya, that's a whole different context. So what we're seeing is not excessive takedown, rather it's the lack of takedown that we're seeing that might actually have an implication on offline lives of individuals. But again, this takedown should be right respecting. There's no, those two things are not the same. There's no justification for excessive takedown in this context. And what we're saying again here is that we've seen this over and over again. We should be able to learn from this. So set the right parameters, set the right emergency escalation systems. You have trusted partners, you have many other folks that have been used, that are within this, that are in engagement with Facebook. This is not the first time that is happening in Ethiopia. We've learned this from Myanmar, we've learned this from India. So please take all of that experiences and try to understand what is happening here. We're not asking for excessive takedowns, and that should not be the case. And those two things I don't think should be synonymous.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's not like going from one extreme to the other. That's definitely not the solution. We have another question, and I think it's a very important one. Would you include the diaspora into this conversation? And is there a call to regulate content posted abroad that perpetuates violence in Ethiopia? Who wants to start?
Yeah, well, there are a lot of content that are produced from abroad. There are politically, of course, most of the posters that usually incite violence are politically motivated, but they seem, it is usually ethnically targeted, but there we found pages that actually pretend to be a member of, pretend to be run by a member of one ethnic group, and posts hateful content against the other. But at the same time, the same page used to incite violence against the same ethnic group, which it pretended to be a member of previously. So you somehow understand they have different political agenda, or they may be from a very different ethnic group membership. So there are those kinds of pages, and when we follow their posters, they make posters even when internet is down in Ethiopia. So we can certainly assume that they are run by a person from the diaspora. By the way, during the past days, when the internet was down, I found out when it is back that there is a Facebook page created to report hateful contents. It's called Network Against Hate Speech in Ethiopia. Also has an Amharic name, Mentor. So they reported about 102 contents that are violent and posted by the diaspora community, because internet was down back then, and they have 72% of success. In their reporters have been removed because they are made, they meet the community standards of Facebook, but the remaining are still live. But I have seen some of them. I still believe they should be removed, because even though they don't seem, somehow they are violating, but when you understand the context on the ground, they need to be removed. So yes, there are contents and there are attempts to report those as well, if I found the question well.
Berhan, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. So I think one thing to understand here is that, the Ethiopian diaspora, because of, the 40, 50 years of injustice people have lived through, the diaspora in Washington, D.C. is a strong one. The diaspora in London and Stockholm and, Frankfurt is, everywhere you go, there's an Ethiopian restaurant because Ethiopians live there, right? So that's how strong the Ethiopian community is, right? So that's and there's a reason why people are so invested in Ethiopian politics. And what we've seen, and as Befeqadu has rightfully pointed out, is when the internet goes off, the hateful content doesn't stop. But what seems to happen is that, the trusted partners, the people that actually for free do this work for Facebook, not because they want to help Facebook, is because they care about their country and the things that they're seeing online. When they go offline because they don't have access to internet, it doesn't mean that the hateful content stops. So that whole Silicon Valley system of one system works for the whole rest of the world doesn't work in this context. So, and we've seen this many times. It's not the first time that Ethiopia has shut down the internet and the diaspora has taken over. So what adjustments have been made since the last many multiple incidents of violence in the country? So the diaspora is really strong, has that transatlantic relationship between those in the US, those in Europe, and those in in the Arab world. If you look at remittance in the country, if you look at in the way that information is passed, our struggles are not just in Ethiopia, it's beyond, right? Like it's basically everywhere you go. So again, in the way that these companies work and engage and with Ethiopian users, it's not just about the 6 to 7 million users in Ethiopia. It's also about the folks that are in DC. It's also about the folks that are in Berlin. So they have to be able to adapt and change within that. So the diaspora is, a really significant. When you talk about Ethiopia, you talk about the Ethiopians in DC. I think for me, that's how strong the Ethiopian diaspora is, and heavily invested in good and bad faith as well.
Indeed, I actually lived in DC some time ago, and I remember how big the diaspora from Ethiopia is there. Okay, so we have a comment, and I'll read that from Razgan Abu Bakr. He says, "Yes, lean into your diaspora. That's how the Sudanese kept it on while the internet was shut during the revolution last year." Our last question for today, I think, is which regulatory modality, i.e. command and control, co-regulation, or self-regulation, do you think is the best one to achieve adequate regulation of disinformation on social media platforms under emergency situations? I see you, Berhan.
I don't think there's this idea of co-regulation, self-regulation, command and control, like all of those things are words that don't mean much to me. I think at the core of it, it has to be about what actions are going to be taken and what scenarios are we talking about. So if violence is happening in the Somali region in Ethiopia, that's a very different context than it happening in Addis. It's a very different context than it happening in Ambo, right? So it has to be, so they have to think about the scenarios and the narratives. And I know, for me as a social scientist, there's we should sit down. They should involve anthropologists. They should involve ethnographers. They should involve psychologists. They should involve political scientists to understand what this is. If we're talking about real solutions to these problems, that is the thing that I'm seeing. But for now, I think what's really important is context of people that understand the Ethiopian context of people that understand the language and the different ways that we use them. And the way that Amharic is spoken, when you stress on certain words and when you loosen it up, it's a completely different context. So that's also what history is, right? And that's also what our lives are. So I think for me, it's about, immediately increase your it's about self-regulation, because I don't think they can now in the state work with the government to be co-regulated. Technically, social media is under government regulation. They have to take down content that's reported to them within 24 hours. Technically, if they're supposed to abide by Ethiopian legislation right now, but that's not the case, and that legislation is extremely flawed in a sense that it's toothless in a sense. It doesn't do anything when it comes to it doesn't do it much when it comes to, holding social media platforms accountable. The onus is on the individuals that are propagating hate, but that can't be the way that we're going. So it has to be about working with civil society organizations. It has to be about working with the diaspora. It has to be about working with people like Befeqadu and others that are on the ground, that are doing this work, that are experiencing this. And it also has to be about human rights impact assessment, not one that's just going to be shoved within this platforms. It has to be one that's publicly published. And we've seen some of the actions Facebook has taken after Myanmar. So those, that should be our learning, right? Like, so for me, it's not about co-regulating, self-regulation. It's about taking those steps to save, potential lives that might be lost because of the lack of action from these platforms.
Thanks a lot, Berhan. Yeah, it's about real action and not just policy words that are void of the local context and the real people who can make an impact on the ground. Befeqadu, do you want to add something to what Berhan said?
Yeah, I just want to say some things. It's not about command and control when we demand the platforms respond or actually proactively, lead the anti-disinformation and anti-hate speech campaigns. It is because their failure to actually clean their platforms is, imposing a lot of burden on the people living in authoritarian systems. I am a social media enthusiast myself. When it was barely possible to speak to power in Ethiopia, we used actually the social media to voice ourselves, to speak, and to be eventually heard to some extent. So I am social media enthusiast, and we are always concerned about promoting conflict-sensitive dialogue. That can be possible when the platforms respond quickly and proactively. Otherwise, the governments are using it as an excuse to suppress freedom of expression in the country. We already have a law that is intending to repress false information disseminations. We are experiencing international shutdowns frequently. That's why we want the platforms to take over, not a demand to command and control. Also, we know and recognize our responsibilities. We believe that we can do something using the platform itself if the platforms are cooperative enough to do media literacy. We also use the same platform, to demand government transparency when they fail to. We also want to hold them accountable when they fail in being transparent, or when they fail to do, the right governance. So it should be seen as an effort to, to have an environment that we can co-regulate one another. I see it that way.
Thank you. So we have a comment from Myanmar, from Kin. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Forgive me if I don't. He says, I think when it comes to responding to excessive takedowns, it shouldn't be on the civil society, who are most of the time rolling the sleeves to do the stuff Facebook should be doing, given the fact that they have a lot of resources and money to do so. When the civil society asked for the consistency in terms of duplicate content and many more, the excessive takedown might happen, and I believe it shouldn't be circle back to the civil society's asks, but question the platform if they are doing their job right. Thanks, Berhan, and all for this session. We have what I believe a last question, actually, from... Okay, so the question reads, you have said that disinformation is spread over different platforms. Besides claiming responsibility for each of the platforms, what can civil society do to neutralize this discourse of hate online on those same platforms?
I have briefly mentioned what the civil society can do. It's I mean, especially it is media literacy that the civil society that can do broadly, because the problem in our context, for example, is that people tend to believe whatever is written on the social media, whatever the social media is, Facebook or other. So this happened because of the repressive political history we have. The mainstream media, especially the state-run media organizations that have broader reach than any other mainstream media, they have been, propaganda machines for the ruling party, and they are still the same. So people tend to believe individual citizen journalists online, and when the people, the citizen journalists write angrily, they share some of those angers, and they take, when they are ethnicized, like they are happening most of the times, they also, find themselves there. They are emotionally appealing to the readers. And majority of our population, if you know, are the youth. Like 70% of Ethiopians are below the age of 30. So, they tend to believe whatever is written on the social media. So it needs massive campaign on media literacy. What is fake news by itself? How can it, appear? Is it in a sarcastic manner, in jokes, embedded in jokes, or in pretending to be a fact, having figures and pictures that are photoshopped, even videos? So people don't know much about fake news or false information and disinformation. They don't know the conceptual or the legal frameworks about hate speech. They don't know what happens, or they don't know much about the consequences of their words or wordings in political conversations. So the civil society, the role of the civil society is to educate or to use even those same platforms in teaching the audiences about what this means to them, or how they should take news. But it is not an easy task. It is not, to teach people, to teach social media users about fake news is not as appealing as ethnically charged, politically charged content. So it is very difficult. It takes a lot of efforts, resources, and big mobilization. That's why it is difficult. But still, some organizations like ours understood the problem and our role, we believe. But like I said, it is a difficult job and it takes much effort. We will try as much as we can.
And your efforts are indeed very crucial. So Berhan, do you want to have the last word for the session today?
Sure. The reality is, we need to do work on the ground. And again, whenever I speak with governments, I always say nobody goes out to kill somebody because somebody on Facebook told them to go kill them. In most contexts, that's not the case, right? Like, so if you're telling me to go kill somebody from a different ethnic group, because there's foundational problems on the ground and, generational trauma and problems that we haven't dealt with. So the honest, again, in this, if we're talking about violence and people being put in danger and their lives being put in danger, it's about governments taking that action. It's about conflict resolution. It's about, transitional justice. It's about, conflict resolution and reconciliation, right? Like, so I think civil society needs to act in that space, but then also online, unfortunately, again, the burden falls on us as civil society, as activists, as individuals, as researchers, to carry this burden, even to have this conversation, rather than do our actual work that we're supposed to do. We're busy drafting, letters. We're busy engaging in the space without much change happening. So I genuinely hope that this is a wake-up call for them, and so that this cycle of violence, unfortunately, as it continues to happen in Ethiopia, at least some actions should be taken in the online space, and in platforms such as Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and others are equally culpable in this. So I'm hoping they really heed you know, we're frustrated, but you know, it's important to engage. We're frustrated, but you know, these are some of the things that we think will help the situation. And I think, yeah, they should heed our advice. I think that's would be my last word for this session.
Thank you so much, Berhan and Befeqadu, for the insightful conversation. Much appreciated. And I do hope indeed that they heed to our call. I thank our audience for joining us. I hope it was also insightful for you. And thank you very much again, and take care, everyone.
Thanks, Marwa.